Well, Amnesty International says John Key's scaremongering with his comments about asylum seekers aiming to come to this country. And Amnesty says he should have more compassion, and this country has a legal and moral responsibility to protect those people. Joining me now is the organisation's Chief Executive, Patrick Holmes. Good morning, Patrick. Thanks for joining us. What is our legal responsibility in future if so-called boat people reach our waters?
Well, if asylum seekers reach our waters, however they reach it, whether it's by boat or by plane, then we have an obligation under the UNHCR to assess them and process them in a humane way in accordance with international law. Now, as long as people are out there in international waters, then of course our government doesn't have that responsibility. And that appears to be the strategy of the government at the moment, to keep them away from our waters, so it's not our problem.
It's a hot potato that we can distance ourselves from. John Key says they're criminals. Is he perhaps making an assumption here that these people have been smuggled?
I think that's a huge assumption. Of course, people smuggling is illegal. It's a terrible thing, and of course, no one would support people smuggling. But there's no evidence to suggest the people on this boat are indeed anything to do with people smuggling. This is a human story. They're in inhumane conditions, terrible conditions there, with children and women and children on that boat. There's nothing to suggest they're criminal, nothing to suggest they're engaged in any criminal activity. Seeking asylum is not illegal.
At the moment, we haven't really humanised this, have we? We talk about it as a boat, as people coming here. Do we need to look at the humanity of this situation?
Well, of course we do. I think we need to ask ourselves why people are forced onto vessels that are often not seaworthy, why they set sail to a speck in the southern oceans in the middle of winter. They're fleeing from a very difficult situation. 20 years of civil war in Sri Lanka, well-documented human rights abuses there. People are imprisoned for their political and religious beliefs. So we've got to address the core issue here, why people are forced onto boats to try and flee these situations.
It can't be an easy ride, I have to say, to get on a boat, as we've seen that boat, and come across that level of water.
Well, of course, we have no land boundaries, and we are in the middle of a large ocean. People have got to be pretty desperate to try and set sail for New Zealand. And I think Mr. Key's suggestion that this is the thin end of the wedge and we'll see an armada, a deluge of asylum seekers, is simply not credible. We're so far away, it's such a dangerous journey. I think what we need is to address why people are getting on these boats, and we also need to look at a regional solution. We can't just put them back on a boat and put them back out to sea until one of those boats sinks.
We did have a poll on Campbell Live last night that found that 79% of people said, no, we shouldn't let these people in. It does beg the question, why should we? Because some people would argue here that there are citizens of New Zealand who are more in need of the resources and the finances of the government than the people who are currently in that detention centre.
I don't think Amnesty would argue the case that clearly we've got our own people here that need support too, and there are many instances of dire poverty, for example, here in our own country. But New Zealand has got a rich tradition, a great history of reaching out and offering humanitarian support and protecting the rights of others. And I think it's a sad day if New Zealand is not able to extend that kind of support to people now. Now, Amnesty is not suggesting that it should be open doors and and all comers are welcome. There's a process to go through, and people have to be assessed. And of course, we have nothing to do with people smuggling, which is illegal, and preys on innocent victims.
OK, just quickly, Patrick Holmes, what would you like the government to do? What stance would you like them to take then?
I would like the government to explore a regional solution to this with our neighbours, with Australia primarily. There's not an armada on our way, on this way, but there will be other people trying to get to our shores, and putting them back to sea is not the answer. There needs to be a regional solution.
All right, Patrick Holmes from Amnesty International, thank you very much for your time this morning.